a beer at the end. I don't know if it's...
Do a bit. Have you got the sound going?
Hello?
Is that right?
That doesn't...
Hello,
oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah. All working. How's it going? How are you feeling?
Good.
Good?
Yeah.
Let's do a check-in.
There's a lot of people here.
Sinx doesn't come out much.
Let's do a check-in, right? Because I know you do this at the office, which I actually love, and since have sort of adopted, and we're doing these kind of momentum groups now, which we're doing a pilot run for, and one of the things that we're checking is like, on a personal level, you know, 1 to 10, where do you sit? On a business level, 1 to 10, where do you sit at the moment?
We do that. We call it check-ins, and so we do that in all our meetings. Is that what you mean?
Exactly. So before the meeting starts.
So nervous, I don't know what's going on. Fucking
so
hell.
do you know what?
I'm so pissed.
Why don't I go
don't drink,
first?
by the way.
Why don't I go first? Right? I'll
Go
get
on
naked
then,
first.
yeah.
Well, not
There's one
really,
there if
but
you don't
yeah, I'll go first, and
Yeah,
then and then basically we'll pass on to you. So I mean, for me, I'm on a 10, on a fucking 10 when it comes to business right now. Like, I mean, like. Amazing, right? Like really, this is making me feel so happy right now. New venue, you know, Anne coming on board. Where's Will? Will at the back. Will's fucking amazing at community management and just like, you know, 10 steps ahead of me all the time. I love what I do every single day, and it's thanks to you guys. So yeah, like I'm on a 10. Personal. Probably somewhere at like a 7, I would say right now. It's all a bit kind of rocky. You know, a lot of you know that I've gone through a divorce last year, and I see my daughter every 2 weekends, which is tough. And I guess I'm sort of learning how to deal with that all, and it's all kind of quite fresh. So you know, I guess I'm on a 7, but I am happy. You know, so don't worry. Like, I'm not going to run out there and fall down 4 stories. That's what happens when you run out there. So that's me.
Yeah, it's good.
Go. T.
Do you want to go?
That means you want me to go. I said to my wife, Lise, this morning I was like super chuffed. I think one thing that me and Sinx have never been very good at is kind of appreciating the now. I think we've run this whirlwind trip for 15 years, and I've never really sat down together and kind of look back at what we've done and actually been proud of, allowed ourselves to be proud. So I said to Lisa this morning that, today I actually felt like I would allow myself to chill out and just actually be excited by the fact that you lot would want to actually hear what we've got to say. Like, I truly am honoured that anyone would care about what we've got to say. So thank you. So on that level, I'm really excited. Personally, so I suppose that is personal. So yeah, fuck, it's so blurred. We don't have a distinction between our life and our work. It's our passion. Work's pretty hard at the moment, I have to say. So probably it's a really hard time at the moment. So I don't know, somewhere low. I don't know how low I've ever been, but it's probably as low as I've got. So what, a 5? I don't get much lower than that. I've got Sanctus to lean on. So.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Work. Yeah, like Mo says, the work's pretty tough. It has been for a while. However, we've kind of, or I've handed over my own role to a new CEO, Carsten, which is going really well, and he's super great. So that's kind of like that's really exciting and cool. Personally, I'm good. I'm in a good place. I had a bit of your thing a long while back, so I'm in a good place. And I have. Well, we actually have our 40th birthday, although you're not actually now even coming to my. I have my 40th birthday coming up soon, which I'm planning some big thing for, so that's quite exciting. But yeah, no, I'm good and looking forward to this.
Yeah, he chose a date, my ad. Let's put it that I can't make, so that's why I'm not going.
Because of you.
It was true, I did choose that date, but then I moved it. I thought we were best mates, we'd do anything for one another, but you wouldn't do it.
Well, you know, that's interesting, right? Because you just said best mates. Yeah. I mean, how long have you known each other for now?
30 years.
30 years.
Yeah. Since secondary school.
Amazing. And I know you've grown up in the lovely village of Tunbridge Wells.
Do you know it?
I think I do. I think I moved there in October. So I guess, you know, maybe starting off with that really as like sort of the foundation. You know, I've listened also to your podcast that you do, JFDI, which I really love. There's a lot of really good insights and nuggets on that.
Good plug.
There we are. I got your back, man. So, you know, looking back at growing up, did you grow up quite differently, and was your upbringing quite differently, and how would you describe that?
Mills had money and I didn't.
I worked hard, but no, I think we're very different. I think we're often in terms of our friendship. I think a lot of people have best mates, I assume. A lot of people I don't think can work with their best mates, and me and Sinx grew up with a number of other best mates that are mutual best mates that we wouldn't want to work with. I think the beauty, me and Sinx are polar opposites in everything really, other than our values. So our values are 100% aligned, and I think that's why we got on with each other. And I think that's the reason our relationship has weathered the 15 years in terms of our spending every day with each other. And I think for me and Sinx, we've never. I know this wasn't the question you asked me, but we purposely blurred the work-life balance. There was no such thing as a work-life balance because we believed we were going to try and build us two to be a place that we wanted to be more than we wanted to be anywhere else. So there was no concept of going to work because we were just doing what we love to do. So and that just came out. I think was we were just genuine best mates, like growing up being very interested in design in this little pokey town called Tunbridge Wells that we moved out of pretty soon. Dan's now moved there, and we wanted opportunity. Now I'm joking. I would move there if my mum didn't live there, but
I guess the subjects we did and everything were. I mean, although we were totally opposite. I mean, that's what sort of made us kind of have to. I mean, we were in the art classes and design class. I mean, that was where we started kind of building up like real time together in school, and then out of school. There was a bigger group. I mean, we're still actually friends with most of those. We're still very close friends with most, but there was a much bigger group of us. But then as soon as I guess me and Mill's kind of future started going towards design. I mean, I was only ever really good at design, so when you choose your career, mine was only ever going to be art. I didn't have those options to go to English and kind of that was kind of the glue in the kind of in school.
Right. Okay. And I think there was something around as well. Like you would always work in school holidays.
Yeah.
And you would
He's a mug.
How would you think sort of those experiences and stuff have sort of shaped the way that you work today in the business?
Tell me your landscape gardening job.
Yeah, I don't. It's interesting. I mean, I joke about Mill's kind of I mean, he wasn't in a castle or anything, but I mean, my dad was a jazz musician, which kind of sums up the kind of lack of money that we had in the house. But and I'm a grafter. I like working, and I can make pretty mundane jobs quite exciting, which was quite good for the early days of for us too. So I guess I mean I had some pretty labour-intensive jobs when I was super young, and I guess in a way that sort of wired me in a way where I roll my sleeves up and I get stuck in, and I don't mind doing insane hours or even really boring things if it's for the good of the. I mean, when it's your company, it's different. If you sit and you don't mind putting it. So I guess I never really think of those linking things, but I guess some of that kind of has come through into kind of who I am and how we work. I mean, Mills was like that at the beginning as well.
I always say Sinx is a doer, and I'm proud of the fact that he's a doer, and I'm a don'ter because I prefer. I get very excited by other people doing things, and I'm more than happy to let them take to do the landscape gardening, and as long as I get paid for it. So and that's kind of what happens. But I think that's down to the beauty of me and Sinx, so the polar opposites, is that at the beginning neither of us are the best designer, neither of us were business-minded. We were just two extremely passionate people who believed in trying to create a place that we would want to work at and we want to be part of. And I think a lot of that was down to the fact that the company we came up from before was absolutely loony bin in many ways, but it taught us that you could enjoy your work, even if the work we were doing was pretty bad. But I've completely forgotten what the fuck I was saying, but I think the key thing there is that we aren't afraid to get. Well, he's not afraid to get down and dirty with work.
You weren't. To be fair, he wasn't in the early days. But
so I guess I know you all want to start hearing about kind of how the business started and all that sort of thing, but I do just because I think the personal side is always quite an important one to understand how people are wired in different ways and how that sort of impacts the way that you run the business as well. Yeah. And I guess looking at the things that you do outside of the business right now, I mean, you've just got into ultra marathon running, all these sort of things. Yeah. So, how about yourself, Sinx? What is what?
Well, I'm still having to work. But I mean, I've always had I wouldn't call them hobby. I mean, I've always had passions outside with architecture and buildings and kind of. But it's always been it's never been quite the intent. I mean, Mills is really going for it and has to train for it and stuff, and
Yeah.
so I don't have that yet. I mean, I've got loads of normal things that you see at the bottom of CVs type thing, but but no, I haven't got any big time. I mean, like Mills says, our lives, we made a decision quite early on that our work and our home life. I mean, when you're 25, it's easy to do that because it's all one. I guess later that gets a lot trickier, but they're kind of one. They became one thing, which has benefits and has obviously downsides. And as you get older and things change, and family and mortgages and kind of like that. But at the beginning, I mean, when we started, it was kind of like we didn't really have much. Our outgoings were tiny. We didn't have much. It was more like let's at least try and give this a shot.
Talk us through like the hours that you guys were working. You know, because I think that's also another thing to really bear in mind, because there's all these things now that, you know, are on the internet of people going life work balance, all this sort of stuff, and
a lot of them from us.
You know, but as owners of the business, like, you know, what were the hours like in the early stages for you guys?
I mean, there was. I come back to like what I said. Like, it wasn't. We just worked all the time. I mean, we never. I think recently I talked about sacrifices, and I worked out that I didn't actually make any sacrifices in my life. My wife actually made a big sacrifice in that, you know, she knew that she was marrying somebody that was dedicated to us two, and that was there was no choice for me but to be 100% focused on it, and that's because I wanted to. Not, you know, we set out. We jokingly or jovially enough. Well, we actually made it legally an entity, but we refer to us two as a fampany and not a company, because we wanted to try to make this family company. And because we were sort of so against this idea of what we had seen out there as other businesses, we wanted to try to create something different. I think probably a bit naively as well, we believed that we wanted to tread our own path and that we didn't really want to listen to anybody else. I think, you know, in hindsight, that was a bit foolish. You know, we probably made a lot of mistakes that we didn't need to make, really. But we put a lot of hours in. I mean, it was all the time. But one thing I would say, it was. I mean, we used to joke. I still love it. I wish we were still in those days. You know, if you got to the studio at 6:30 a.m., you'd apologise to the other guy. He's like, "Fuck, sorry, I'm so late." And it was like, it was a joke, but it was a joke. That, I mean, I knew there was an issue eventually, because I remember it was even difficult for me to leave the studio early, let's say, without me feeling like I was feeling really guilty and I owned the business. You know, I think we think, what the fuck's going on here? But I'd say the first 10 years, it was his entire life, everything. And I think we believe, and I still do, that if you want to create something with genuine legacy and you want to get it to the Premier League, if there is such a place for it, then we believe we have to put everything in it. And because we never had a hobby. Like, it's only you talk about ultra running now, but I chose a hobby that I can still think, and actually I believe that running enables me to think bigger, so that he can do more. But but actually we've actually never had a hobby, and a lot of people have always, a lot of advisors we've had over the years, sort of said that it's important to have hobbies outside of your passion, you know, so that another passion can fuel the us two passion in the times of hardship, and I can relate to that now. I think, you know, there's many times there's times a few years back, where I'm sure we'll come back to it later, where I nearly walked away from the thing because I just couldn't handle it anything more, because I didn't really understand. I just couldn't work out why I couldn't get happy, and the only thing I could think it must be would be us two. But then if you walk away from the only thing you know, it's like, what the fuck, I better not do that. So luckily he didn't let me go. He gave me a week off, so he kind of him sorted me out there, I have to say.
There was, I mean, it was huge hours, but I mean, I will say that we were working in a place that we designed, and I loved the studio, and I loved the kind of the furniture, and kind of I'm really into that kind of stuff, and we loved the people that we were working with. So for me, like, and it wasn't. I mean, we were doing a lot of work hard, play hard kind of drink. Like, it was. I mean, there was like, I mean, literally Fridays were like, oh my God, I'm not going to be back until Monday. So the weekends were like. And it wasn't all slogging. There was tons of fun. Like, it was, we probably were, although we were there, crazy. I mean, my flat was well shit at the time. So actually, I was staying in the office like 3 or 4 nights a week.
It's a studio, you know that.
Yes, sorry, studio. But it's not. I just want to be clear. It wasn't like from like 7 in the morning, like kind of working. It was.
Pissing about.
It was it was a lot of pissing about. I mean, it was definitely more than an 8-hour working day, but you know, we were there for this long and we were doing this much work, and there was lots of
Yeah.
fun
I would
and
say we never.
socialising.
I don't think, unless you're correct, I don't think we. Apart from that one weekend we did well, we never worked weekends. It was like a switch. It was like, you know, you were
We
drinking.
never
every
came
night.
in and worked weekends.
We never
It's on
came.
our
Yeah,
head
we were
the
sorry.
whole
You're,
time,
as I'm sure you all know, you can't switch off even if you wanted to switch off, and that's the kind of that's why you go crazy. But we never actually went into the studios. That we always had that boundary, but we were always really excited by Mondays up until a few years ago, and then we weren't excited anymore.
So let's talk about.
Sorry, we're jumping ahead. You're gonna have to hold us together. We fucking go off tangent every minute, you know.
But that's great, right?
We're excited.
You know, there's something there for everyone, right? Like, take what you want, leave what you want.
The bullshit
right?
show.
Let's talk about a topic that is quite a big topic in our industry, which is, you know, there's a lot around this whole notion of you build an agency, you scale it up, and then you sell it, right? And you sell it either to a big network, you cash out, and you fuck off, right? And then who knows what happens afterwards, You both have categorically made the decision that you're not gonna sell.
Yeah.
So let's start with, what does that mean? Like, define that. Like, what does that actually mean? Because selling can mean so many different things, right?
Yeah.
So what does that mean for you guys when you say we're not going to sell the agency?
Shall I?
It means we're not going to sell it. Guys, I don't know. It's what, like, this is we're all founders here. I mean, I don't know the scales of your agencies, or I don't know where we sit in comparatively to the sort of revenue stuff, but just between us and the film you're about to put out. We turn over about 25, the studios turn over about 25 million, and on the average sort of non-release game year, I guess the game company will spit out about £6 million. So that's sort of like our adventure just eats money because we're sort of like long-term investments that hopefully one day will pay off. So roughly speaking, our group is making about £30 million a year. Obviously, it didn't start like that on day one. We should sell it, yeah. No, but just to kind of give you some understanding of like what ball. I don't know. So I just wanted to frame that.
Yeah.
Where that's. We actually know very little about the industry, so we don't know where that sits. You know, where we have been happy with that in the past.
But I guess now we've got that, as Mill said, we've got the 3 bits, and there's a holding company, and we've invested in 20 plus kind of companies in varying level. So I guess. When we say don't sell, I mean that was originally when we were talking about the studio business, kind of the agency business. Is, you know, now we've got these other things, and some of them are an investment. We very much want that to sell. So it doesn't mean we don't want to ever sell anything that we do. And in fact, there's companies that we've specifically invested in that we very much hope they sell, or companies that we founded that we want them to sell. So the intent was definitely behind the studio business, and now the kind of the holding company and the group. But there were parts in that we would definitely consider. Well, in fact, very much would like to sell.
Yeah.
We just again sort of to give some understanding of like where we came from. Like, we never had any plans to be sitting up here talking about this. Obviously, 15 years ago, we didn't. We just started the London studio. Obviously, it was a very small studio just around the corner in Curtin Road, and we had no concept of trying to build anything other than just getting our head down and working. Like, that's all we cared about, and the work wasn't brilliant. But we just wanted to work with great people, and that was it. You know, over the 15 years, you know, we've just believed that one of our key values, the one I remember, is enjoy the journey, and like we enjoy ourselves, and we are good at seizing opportunities when we feel something's right. So eventually we spit out, you know, a game like Monument Valley, and it does well, and then we decided to build a games company out of the back of that, and then the investments came because in some ways we just got bored as well, and it got quite exciting to invest money to meet other people. So then we didn't know that we would move beyond the core client service business. We didn't even know there was an opportunity to do that. And I think, come back to your question about why never selling, let's assume it was just that we're talking about the client service agency. I think we've never been driven by money. You know, we're not stupid. We actually are. Well, you can clearly see we are a little bit. But, you know, we're not, the motivation is not making money. You know, we wanted to build a place, let's say, that we have a, you know, we've increasingly understood our mission is ultimately to make a meaningful impact on the world through the sort of products and services we build. You know, we're by no stretch of the imagination there yet. You know, we definitely didn't start out to have that. We didn't even know about missions and values and visions until a few years ago. And so for the idea for us, you know, what we did know is that a lot of the agencies, and I guess we probably looked at agencies that were owned by big whole companies like the WPPs, etc., without knowing anything really about them and the people in them. We didn't really like what we saw. And so for our success was never going to be building a business where we care about the people in it. We're building a family full of people, our friends. An exit just for us made no sense, because in our eyes, exit only ever means like the legacy dies and the friendships in there die. And yeah, granted, potentially might get a lot of money, but what the fuck do you do with that? That's not the drive. Is not money. The driver for us is legacy, is meaningful impact, and we haven't hit either of those two yet.
Is the idea then in your mind that you're going to do this till you retire, or
I've retired already.
I guess I'm just trying to kind of get to the point as well, if one day, I don't know, something changes in your life and you want to do something completely different, and you get this epiphany and you're like, oh, I don't know, I want to travel around the world for the next 3 years, or whatever. Like, what do you do in that scenario?
It's a good question. I mean, and there are other kind of, there are other scenarios where like really bad shit happens, or you have to kind of look after, or you have to leave, or kind of one of us might get hit by a bus. There's all sorts of things that may, I mean, if really significant things like that happen, then I guess, well, if he's still here, unless he's the one that's been hit by a bus, then I get, but then I get, for me that changes, it changes everything about how we kind of, but I guess when we plan and go forward, we're on the kind of more strategic sort of visionary, where we go, and that's like, for me, that's the point. I mean, just from studying in London and then starting a company, like, we know so many people that have sold out, and some of them are like individually very, very, very wealthy and very happy, but there's nothing left. Like the agency normally kind of like sort of falls apart, gets eaten up, or kind of there are some examples of this working, but the majority of which we know a number of those founders, like. The story from a creative point of view of those agencies, it normally peters out, and it's kind of like, it's not like, I mean, we don't make decisions on money first, but it's not like I want to walk away with this with nothing. So we do need to think about our own wealth, and kind of we believe we can generate enough money for ourselves to look after ourselves and family in future, and then start thinking about the company and the legacy and sharing more money with the people in the business, and still own it, and still kind of it's not like I don't want any money and I'm happy to leave and kind of go and get another job in an agency. I definitely don't want to do that. So for me, it's about looking at the business, looking at what we need for ourselves and family if one of those things were to happen, or if we just change our mind, and then designing a solution or system that would work with that going forward. And I'm, if we end up selling to like a big holding company, for me that would be a massive. I mean, God forbid, if we were going under, then you look at all options and stuff. But that would be a massive failure for us.
It's definitely worth noting. I mean, I think we are maturer than we were when we started. We were, like I said, we were just 24-year-olds or 25-year-olds. We have to think differently now. Like, we are more tired than we were because I run too much. And I think it's naive for us to. One thing we have learned is it's naive to say never about anything. I'm not saying that means now we're going to sell, by the way. But I just think you do change. I started with Sinx very passionately, very hands-on at a business that became, at one point over 300 people in our studios alone. And I don't work in there at all anymore. This year was the first year that we replaced Sinx out with a competent CEO, and and it's a magical time for us. And that we headhunted someone that we believed had the, who had worked in some of the companies that we aspired to be, like Frogs and RJ, etc., and had the ability to take this company to the next level, because we just don't have those skills. Like one thing we were very good at, I think, in the early years was using my skill of letting other people be the best that they can be, and supporting them. We definitely are we're not sort of, clearly you have an ego, everyone does. You wouldn't start a business in some way, but we're not trying to be. We're trying to support good people and give them the platform to be the best they can. It doesn't always work. Fucking hell, I literally completely forgot what the fuck I was saying then. I need to start drinking again. It's a joke. It's meant to be. But I think, we are. It's definitely a different place now. Like, I don't actually work in the studio side of the business. So I own, near enough 50% of.
So you're almost constantly evolving, really. Anyway. So it feels like.
Yeah, I think you're evolving, aren't you? And which we try to put. We have. Maybe it's wrong in many ways, and I don't know what you lot do, but we put the company in front of us. Sorry, first. until today. Like, still to this day. Like, even to this day, we hadn't been paying ourselves properly. And I don't even when we were paying ourselves okay, but majority of people were paid more than us. And we think that was right, actually, because we were paying ourselves.
Well, there's a few people that were paid more. I'm just saying, not 300 people.
No, 200. But I think you change, don't you? Like, I'd love to believe that the studios can get bigger and better and be more meaningful, but it's not going to be with me and Sinx running it. In fact,
yeah, I mean, we'll have a. I mean, I still need to work out what my role. I mean, my formal role now is more of a studio chair, which I don't really know what that means yet. But I guess from a sort of protecting the values and the guardian of the brand and kind of the found there's it probably won't be a full-time job in that, but there is a really important role in kind of making sure that like the studio sticks on the kind of like on the direction of the kind of the founder. You know, as long as we're still in the business, that's the kind of. But beyond that chair role and how me and Mills kind of participate in that group, whether it's in studios or whether it's in game. I mean, I was just a better CEO out of me and Mills for the studio business at the beginning of last year. I mean, I made it very clear that I'm going to be very much at the sort of the limit of my abilities. I mean, I didn't want to be the CEO. I'd kind of been the MD of the London studio, and that was challenging enough. Never mind then having to manage like twice as many people across the studio business. And in all honesty, because we hadn't done it, because everything we're telling you, we started in friends and we kind of grew organically and it was great and fun. Like we missed a lot of those like structural pieces and kind of governance that you put in place that I guess most people have these issues at 50, 100 people. Because we were all such best, like we managed to get to 300 people and then we started feeling the pain and it was 3 times the pain and kind of all of those problems came through. So I guess like me and Mel, like we hit the kind of like we had I think we had like between 20 and 40% profit like 10 years in a row on like just doing this. And we were like, this is pretty, and then it was like, and then we started probably hitting the ups and downs that agencies have, but we hadn't designed the business for the well. We didn't know that there was such a thing as downs, if you see what I mean. So so I guess we hadn't all the structures in place that you have like for.
I mean, just on that note, actually, just from a really practical point of view, like how like throughout the years, how much cash would you always have in the bank in advance to keep the business going? Like, was there a set metric that you would have?
We've always wanted it to be three times the whole group run at the Fampany level. It's come down to about 2 times in the studio level. Games is a bit of a.
So when you say 2 times, just to explain that.
Looking at the cost of the burn rate of the studio, and you try and have per month per studio. And you look at that sort of consolidated across the group, and then you look per studios, and then you kind of the studio group is one. There is an entity above the 4 studios, which is the studio group. And if there's cash that we need to move, we keep that all within within the group entity. The cash. I mean, we've always been fairly cash rich. Sorry, we've had cash in the bank mainly because of Monument Valley and shareholders not taking out money. To be honest,
we were always very good at saving. I think. I mean, if we hadn't, it would be fucked.
Well, that's because you don't know how to get money out of the company.
Well, yeah. It's actually a good point. I've never had a card. I wouldn't even know how you. I actually have no idea how you get it out.
On that note.
I just texted my FD before this, so can you send me a WhatsApp virtual? I have no idea how much we even earned for the last few years.
On that note, a quick sort of slide-in question. Like, you've known each other for a while now.
Yeah,
what would you say is like each other's like absolute top strength and top weakness?
I'm not sure who's going to go first here, because then the other one will like say something even worse. But
mate, be truthful, be honest, and no bullshit here. Come on. I'm going to reel them off. I've got lots. This is like a therapy session now. Funny enough, we actually only... This is why this is also equally nice for me, is that I actually only spend about half an hour with him a week at max, which I get him on this podcast that I do now, the JFDI cast, my ad. But I thought, fuck it, if I'm going to meet him only once a week, I'm just going to get him on my podcast. He can be my link bait to get more listeners. But so it's actually really nice to actually be talking with him. I mean... It's ironic, actually, that we spent so long together over the years, but the last few years we kind of have been quite distant, because I've been working on a different side of the business, the profitable side of my business. Is it true?
yeah.
So back to... Sorry, sir, what is that?
Go on. Strength, top strength, top weakness. Hear this.
Mills is very impressionable.
Mm-hmm. That's a weakness, you're saying it.
Sorry? Yeah, no, I know it's a weakness.
It's not.
No, it is when you change it. It is when you change. Mills can't hold a decision for literally for 24 hours without. His decisions are based on the last person that he spoke to, or his thoughts and views, which is hugely amazing. But running a business is a total and utter nightmare.
Let's stress it out.
And the strength?
Yeah, where's my strength? Just the shit. No, it's
just like Mills can go into a room and almost say nothing, and everyone falls in love with Mills. He has that kind of ability to kind of. I mean, people like me as well. Don't get me wrong, but like, Mills is very, very good at people.
well, I mean, yeah, on a strength level, you know, he's a fucking serious. I mean, I joke about I do stuff as well, but you know, Sinx is not afraid to graft, and you know, the last few years have been tough for us. As we're growing up as a student, really are thinking, fuck, if we're in this Premier League, you've got to fucking work even harder now, or more strategically. And Sinx wasn't afraid. Admitted there was no other CEO to do it, but he was willing to step in, and you know, it's been really hard for him the year, last year, and I've known that he could handle it. Like he doesn't break that easily. He was close to it. So I think, you know, in knowing that you've got a co-founder that kind of literally is unbreakable is pretty good, especially, you know, I can run more. The downside though is that I think you struggle with. This is like an open therapy session.
Next question.
No, but I think you're too. He's very operational. Like it's the now. Like he's about fixing this today, whereas I am naturally. I don't care about today. I want tomorrow, and I want next year. And I think I find it hard to know how best to speak to my best mate about the fact that I need to be speaking about. I only get excited about the big opportunities ahead of us, and he really only wants to talk. So now we have mediators actually between us, our non-execs, that help us.
Scientists.
Yeah, no, but I think we do. But look, I think having our non-execs, which we never had for many years, has allowed us to have a better conversation without riling each other.
Yeah, makes sense. And I think that's I guess if you look at kind of often at like businesses, you've got the integrator, you've got the visionary. It sounds a little bit like, you know, you're sort of more a visionary type person and you're more integrated, you know. And I think there's pros and cons to both of it, right? And
I think you need both. I think you do need both of them.
Yeah.
I think it's probably standard in every business if there's two of you.
Let's talk a little bit about the multiple businesses that you set up, because I think that's really another very interesting topic to debate, because there's a lot of agencies in the room that have thought about, you know, spinning off businesses for various reasons. You know, we've done a piece of content on this recently, and the main reason I hear from a lot of people, right or wrong, is that they look at the agency model and they go, shit, there's not much money in this. Like, and then they look at a startup like Facebook, that suddenly, you know, whatever, like explodes within a few years. I say it's not, maybe Instagram, but basically look at that and look at that model and they go, oh wow, and it becomes lucrative, and then they start building these things. I mean, you've obviously built the games studio first, right? That was sort of the first spin-off.
I think Dice was actually.
Dice was, okay.
Dice was.
But that was a joint
venture. 50%
yeah.
off, yeah.
So let's talk about the games one, because I think that's quite relevant, and it's quite, you know, it's real own big entity, right? And so maybe just quickly talk us through how you started that off. Like, what was the process of doing that? Like, did you set up the business separately straight away? Did you incubate it from within the studio? Like, yeah, talk us through that.
So originally we had. I was never. It very quickly became the reason we basically were successful, if we are successful, was you know, a lot of luck and timing. You know, we definitely grafted, and we definitely had a charisma route that attracted great people. But ultimately, the mobile wave is what we surfed for many, many years, which you know, in many ways has crashed over the last few years. You know, we were in mobile well before the iPhone was out, and doing a lot of work with like Sony Ericsson on sort of feature phones, and getting really intrigued by this idea of the mobile phone. So when the iPhone eventually comes out, actually, we eventually realised there's a distribution opportunity there for us to get like our own sort of point of view via our product out to the mass market. So we, you know, invested a lot of that money that we were making from our client side into releasing our own products. And when I say products, they were fairly novel sort of apps, let's say, but you know, they were mostly creative, just experiments really, with varying degrees of success. But we went at that for 8 years, and what we've found out was, that's the part I focused on really. Although we weren't making money directly from those releases, we were learning how to sell direct to consumers, or not. We were learning how, you know, the idea about marketing and the importance of it, and we were learning actually that although we didn't make money from them, clients were intrigued by this idea, this agency that was willing to put its money where our mouth was, you know. And I think, you know, we very early on, I remember, won a huge, big mobile commerce piece for H&M, because we were an agency that they really liked the sort of stuff we were doing on the side, as well, and that differentiated us from the other agency that were probably as competent, if not more. But it was always like our, let's say, side projects. Well, it started as side projects, and over the years within the London studio, I had a team of 10 people that was coming out of I never understand this bit, the profit or whatever. I mean, how are we paying for that?
This is from the London P&L.
So the London P&L, whatever that means. We were generating money from the clients and using that to spend on a team of 10 that weren't making any money. Yeah. But Sinx could see the value in it because I told them there was value. Now, eventually, you know, that learning year on year, we call it successful failure. You know, every year, although they were kind of fairly nefarious things we were releasing, we were learning a lot, and year on year we wouldn't make the same mistakes again. Eventually we started making a few games. I wanted to actually make games as opposed to just novelty apps. Made a first game, Well Trail, did fairly well, still lost a lot of money. And then we realised that actually in order to make a good game, you need to not just use your sort of UX designers, your animators, you need to have like at least a competent and understanding of game design. So we brought in, you know, we sort of headhunted some exceptional people and brought them in, and we really siloed that team off and said, okay, although you are still a project team and you're still on the London P&L, you can do whatever you want as long as these results, you know, all the results that we ultimately get happen. So they were basically put in a corner, and the rules, we broke the rule for the first time. When we broke all the rules, we sort of said there was no real. You could do whatever you wanted as long as you realised you were spending $1 million. I think it's about $1 million. We committed to spending about a year and a half to build Monument Valley. It was a huge bet because, of course, premium gaming you weren't likely to make much money from it, and our track record was we made nothing. But you know, we allowed ourselves to treat that almost as a separate business without it being a separate business. And then it does really, really well. It did do really well.
Yeah. I mean, we made like 10 million in the first year or something like that, didn't it?
Yeah, there's so much I don't know. But no, I'm joking. It wasn't. It wasn't. I don't think it was that much. I think there's been a lot of numbers. I think it made like 4 or 5 million or something for the first year. But don't get me wrong. I mean, I remember
£1 million investment.
Yeah, I mean, we had never made more than £12,000. Sorry, I remember Well Trail, which, you know, on the first day made 12 grand, and I remember Sinx is like, fuck yes, winning big time. And then the next day it was like 11. He's like, is this right? And then the next day was 7. And then by day 3 it was back to like 3. I remember the first time with MV1, I was at the airport actually, and then Steve, our marketing director, said, like number 1, it hit number 1 straight away, and it made 147,000 quid on day 1. You know, so you know, within a week we had recouped it. And the importance of it was less than money. Was it actually put us on a map that we hadn't been on before? Like suddenly it was like a lighthouse that everyone kind of knew who we were through that. Okay, it had its own problems, of course, because then everyone thought we were a game company.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the kind of the operational side of things as well, right? Because I think this
That's it. Boring.
So, you know, you've got a P&L from the London studio. You've got this games thing in there. Like, and then suddenly you've got this massive success on it, and you've got this money coming in. Like, how does that look on the P&L? Like, because you've got like 2 different businesses basically, but.
Yeah, we have. I guess because I think we were both kind of. I mean, I guess again, operationally, because I was running London, and we were then okay that London's taking the hit on that. I mean, I will like the 6 or 7 years that we were throwing out apps. We were never investing more than we could afford to lose, if you see what I mean. Yeah. But we were more or less investing our entire profit every year into this. And I was definitely wearing thin of kind of like, you know, we were, I mean, in the early days, because of the crazy, and we were billing Sony Ericsson by the hour, so those crazy hours were reflecting in, you know, so, you know, so we were putting all of our profit back into these games. And the other big thing from this is it got us into tech really early on, and that's when we started building more and more tech capabilities. But anyway, that's a side kind of benefit from doing that. But I remember the whale trail, I mean, for years, that's the first time I've actually heard you say it's lost money, because for years Mills has said that's made money and it lost so much money. And he never...
I don't remember saying that, by the way.
His own time or anything like that. But so we were investing a massive part of our profit, but our profits were getting a bit like more normalised, because in the early days they were false, because we didn't have any business support, no senior. It was like 50 designers all working 12 hours a day. It wasn't real. It was and I guess by the time that we were coming up to, we kind of curated the 10-person team, and I remember like it was a big ask for Mills to kind of support this for another year, and I'm like, yeah, but if this doesn't work, we probably won't be able to carry on doing physically we won't be able to kind of manage this financially. So we kept the whole duration of that. We kept on the London P&L, which probably meant London went from about 20% profit to 5% profit or something, or whatever it was. And we absorbed it into the running costs of London. And so that was, I guess, the first touch of operational kind of in London. Then when it starts to become, I mean, ironically, when it starts to become successful, the operational stuff gets way more complex. And you've got games people that essentially are a different type of person. They're paid differently. Incentives for a games business with huge highs and then years of potentially they're different businesses. They're different business models. They make money in a very different way. And at that point, once we had a sort of a successful product, like immediately it was like we need to split this up and set this games company up as a games business with games support and a mission that works for a games business, not an agency business. And that's where we kind of, because we were starting to get slightly internal, like, you know, when the games team said, we're going to do our own hours, and everyone else is like, oh, but we're doing it like, I mean, they sound small problems, but they start to escalate and kind of like, oh, the games company's made millions of pounds, but the studio's not getting a bonus and they're getting you start to have all, and they're all mates, so they're all talking all the time. So we did start to, I mean, the pros definitely outweighed all these issues, but they were issues that we had to deal with. So it was for me, it was a no-brainer. Sort of separated the company only helps partly the way. Separated them physically, because they were all close friends, that was for me. That was when it really became a separate bit. Now they're super separate, and we encourage and try and get them to communicate rather than just saying it's a free for all.
I still remember. I mean, we're definitely better now, and certainly now we have advisors that kind of help us see problems before they happen. I think if you think for 8 years really, our sort of it was called CWA, which they called like cost without accountability was the kind of name.
That was our name for it. Mills' name was
content without attitude. That is fresh. I mean, it wasn't external, but for 8 years, we didn't make any money, at all. Like, I mean, it was a cost centre, and it's funny how psychologically, the games team sort of, in the year I think Monument Valley does well. This is probably the first time London didn't do that well. And so there's no bonuses for studios, and at that stage everyone was on a similar bonus, was on the same bonus. There was no difference between. And we had to. It was a hard one because essentially we're saying to the games team, you've just made like the most successful premium game in history here potentially, and you're not going to get a bonus because the studios that you don't theoretically work for, or that you do. So it was hard. So that we just had to work.
You use the money from the studio to
invest in that, and they got bonuses the year before when they were. Like, I mean, it was. I mean, all reasons again why to separate.
Yeah, it never stops. I mean, we have so many problems all the time. Talk a bit, Sinx. So I'm to do a job.
Do you know? I'm so like.
Now, I wanted to hear why Sinx will often say that Monument Valley is both the best and the worst thing that happened to us too.
Mostly the best, but I mean, that's moving on to kind of like the cash tap of, the cash tap of Monument Valley coming into London. My theory is it papered over a lot of the cracks that were starting to come through, and we just didn't notice them, or if we did, we would sprinkle some money on them, they would disappear. And I think, I reckon when we start, in the beginning of 2016, I think me and Mills definitely realised that that those cracks are sort of more kind of deep crevasses now, and we need to start kind of taking a step back and seeing where those issues, we can't my problem was we were using money from one part of the business that was still within the London studio and kind of pretending it was all one, and kind of there were no problems here, and kind of and then your eye gets taken off the ball on the client work, and kind of so that there were problems wrapping around other problems, but having this, money gets rid of a lot of problems, but also not having it gets you smart pretty quick in dealing with stuff, and I guess that's the bit we didn't do.
Yeah.
And especially me and Mills, and we didn't really have the really senior people that we do now we didn't have the advisors or kind of or the really senior people that have been there and done that now. Yeah. So we were God, how do we do this? Or should we? There's some money. Can you just be quiet for another 6? It was so that sounds like the mafia. But yeah, I think the Monument Valley money sort of papered over a lot of the problems we had in the studio, and meant we didn't deal with them until a few years ago, and which is why we've had it's been tough, not just from a kind of a revenue market, but actually fixing a lot of the problems. Mostly caused by not deliberately or maliciously, but mostly sort of accidentally caused by us.
It's been a big wake up. I think the concept of the Fampany was a wonderfully naive one, and I think the problem is you forget that people grow up, and you don't anticipate that people are going to eventually, including ourselves, are going to have families, and money does become an important factor in people's lives, regardless of whether you're motivated by it. And I think we've particularly struggled over the last few years in sort of having to work with our to help to help people leave that just weren't able to deliver what we need to deliver at the level we're at now. It's a different game, it's not, I would never work, I've had some of the happiest times of my life, the best parties, we used to go away year on year to company holidays, 300 people, 4 days away in Portugal. In those days you were allowed to talk about getting pissed all the time. We
now
did.
It's camping in the field.
No, exactly. No, but I think that was great. But now we're sort of slightly different now. I don't want to go back to that anymore. Now we're trying to truly take sort of what we're doing seriously, but it's a different game now. It's a different game.
Well, let's talk about one. I guess it's less about story, because I don't know how much you can actually sort of legally reveal about this, and I totally respect that.
Let's make it up.
But I guess it's I've had a chat with you guys, and you've had this incident where a past client, has basically owed you a significant amount of money, and I guess the things that I'm sure everyone here is really, really interested in is, that's sort of the story, but how to avoid that problem in the first place, and then also when that happens, because it does happen, how do you overcome it operationally, and how do you overcome it mentally?
So the key, I'm going to say a little bit, and then won't let Sinx finish. The beauty for us of being the owners is that we can make sure that our values we stay strong to our values. And I think that's the fear for us of ever selling, would be that suddenly you're not in control of those values and decisions are out of your hands. The time where it was £1 million owed to us, we had gone against everything we stood for. We had taken a huge risk because of commercial reasons. We let ourselves believe that it's worth taking a punt on a client that clearly is a startup, a huge startup. If you just need to look under the hood, and you'd see that this thing was destined to fail, run by awful people, and we shouldn't have done it. We shouldn't have taken on, as simple as that. But commercial pressure made us think that it's worth taking that risk. And every time we've done that, we've done it a couple of times, it doesn't work out, does it?
So what's the alternative to that? Because that's a really good point, right? because you are on that pressure.
Well,
that
I think,
moment.
so
But,
one
yeah.
thing, you just butt in. We have a thing now. So our agency doesn't do its own IP now. It's worth bringing that back again. We believe that if you're a client service agency, you need to focus on your clients and you need to really love them. And I have to say, there's a guy called Ajaz who owns AKQA, and it's a very different type of business to ours, and we don't play in the same field really. But I watched a film with him recently where I was really enamored, if that's the right word, by the fact that he said that everything they did was for their clients, and I suddenly realised that. That is the key. If you're a client service agent, that is what you're there for. And I think so. Now, just quickly on that one, I think making your own products is great as a kind of like sideshow or as like a marketing, something to attract more clients, and that's certainly what we would do more of now. But as soon as you think it's going to be a business or has a potential to be something like its own sort of way of making revenue, it needs to be out of there as soon as possible for all the reasons we can still go into. Now, back to that question. I think we just did it recently, but we have a rule now, we don't work with startups. We can't afford to take the risks on startups. Startups, I mean, we've started business ourselves, we know what it's like. You're not necessarily right in the head. No disrespect, George. And I think, I like to believe that if you're stronger and you try to gate that money, so you start to get it in. You don't just stack up. We were in an awful position whereby legally we were obliged to continue working because even though we were trying behind the scenes to work out how we could get out of this contract, and we're stacking up the amount of money that we knew was never going to come to us.
4 weeks we couldn't down tools.
It's really, yeah. Yeah, so we had, otherwise there was no chance we'd ever get this money, even though there was no chance. So I think is that right? We tried to get our money up front from startups now.
Yeah.
Has it ever worked?
No. I mean,
don't try that.
I have, yeah. I mean, I guess, generally, we are moving more towards not working with startups. I mean, if it was in a sector of specific interest or real willing of the I'm not saying we would absolutely not, but oh my God, we've had some we're not designed to work with the risks factor involved in a startup, and I'm pretty sure that VCs say to startups, don't pay the agency.
Yeah, I'm sure.
We've had, some of them that are going bust or kind of I can see why they're not going to pay you. They're literally going by. Other ones, they've been happy with the work the whole time, and then it's like, oh yeah, we'll pay you if we get our next round, and it's whoa. Yeah. So we've been burnt a couple of times. This one was on another level. This made, that £1 million loss made our whole London studio not to make any money that year, which meant people not getting bonuses. Never mind the 6 months or I don't know how long we were on it for, but it was really hard for morale and kind of the money was problematic, but the ripple down effect, as is often the case, the money's it's a real problem, but then the secondary and tertiary problems kind of become really, really problematic, and it was really, really bad. It was really bad. I know those, I'm in those discussions where we're talking about taking it on and kind of, and sometimes it's like, well, if we have the team ready, we can start on this on Monday. We don't have the contract, they're not going to pay us up front. If we don't do this, it might take another month before we can find work for so that's the kind of discussions we need to be having with ourselves. And sometimes, I guess, if those conversations come up and we all agree, and I guess me as not the CEO anymore, and kind of we all make the decision to take this big risk because the alternative is then maybe we'll do it. In this case, if we'd done our due diligence, we would never have taken this project on. So, working with startups, who's involved, where the backing, how far through the round is it, what's their history with agencies, do they have tech capabilities, CTO, all of these things before you even touch. It might be exciting work, and working for a bank or something may not be, but the bank has years and years of history of working with agencies in a way that so this happens straight away when you work with bigger clients. Sometimes in an ideal world, you'd have 50-70% of your revenue on these kind of longer kind of pieces of work, and then you would be able to take more risks with startups that meet your values in kind of not this one. Yeah. But for me, the risk and reward, if you work with a startup and there's a chance they don't pay you, then you need to somehow be able, the risk that you need to get more money than you're kind of and that's it's literally never happened. And there's always a game. There's always a kind of can we pay you half? It's like, well, you can't have that conversation after we've done the work.
Yeah.
And it's and then they and depending on where their money's from, they throw in all the big fancy lawyers and it's kind of like, oh god. Yeah. It's just a world where
if you think about the early days, right? So going back to the question around the the avoidance part, but like now think of a moment where you were in a desperate situation in the early days, right? So not now, but in the early days, and you were desperate, and you managed to say no to a client. What did that mean? Did that mean you had to work twice as hard to get more new business in for the next 3 months? Did it mean like you got the team like fired up, or like you took less money, or you paid people like what was that? Because a lot of small agencies get into that scenario where they're quite desperate, and then they're like, fuck, I need to pay 5, 10, 15 people.
It's hard, and that's why I'm saying like sometimes it's okay to make those calls, but what you need to make sure is that everyone at like a senior level is understanding of the risk that business is taking on. And for me, in this case, if an MD is kind of toying with the idea of taking this like risk where the dial is in the red, then that should be a bigger, like that decision shouldn't just be, it should be a group wide, we have this opportunity, it's a bit risky, what do you think? And then if it goes wrong, it's not this like, why have you taken this, And I think that conversation and transparency part when, for me, every project should have a risk analysis piece, and we kind of look at it, and if the needle is in the red quadrant, it should come up and we should discuss. And that's just so as it's off your plate, if you say, so is that like,
and in the early days, did you have that conversation with the whole team?
Oh, in the early days, we didn't do any risk. I think it was different. Like our relationships were we had 5 clients, and we worked with their design centers, and we had 20 or 30 people, it was like we didn't have any new business. We didn't have it was just kind of it just kind of grew organically. I think we've had a few big things where Barclays was one in London where we started doing more and more, and then Credit Suisse. So we've had big things that have like taken us and grown us up in the different studios. But we say no to. We've said no to thousands of projects. Of course, normally it's because they're a waste of time or they don't have the money. But some of them, we have our sort of moral kind of layer that we learn with cigarettes and gambling and porn and stuff that we don't go anywhere near. And then we've got layers above that which people would rather not work on, but they sometimes have to work on. But startups are the ones that I guess we're having most issues with because of the risk of it, and we know because we've co-founded a founder that's got family money in and all sorts of stuff will make any moves to get that company to survive, and letting an agency kind of walk without paying them, that's on the top of their top of their list. Yeah, that's my view.
We've done it.
No, we haven't.
No, it sounded good for the joke. I feel like we were so lucky in many ways to be born into an industry that we were born into. I think very quickly we were able to do a deal. It's the only deal I think me and Sinx put our name to, whereby we got a retainer from Sony Ericsson, which was a new company at the time. Like mobile was becoming big, Sony were betting big on mobile, and we had a very close relationship with the Tokyo designers, and they hired me and Sinx. I think it was £12,500 a month, guaranteed every month. That money would be on our account. And very quickly, we managed to just make that a 30-person contract where we're getting 30 people guaranteed paid every month, And so for, I'd say the first 5 or 6 years, really, we didn't really have any concept of new business development. We were very good at mining the clients that we had.
I spoke to someone the other, because when I look back, it's pretty weird that although Sony Ericsson was new, it was a pretty big company formed by 2 mega companies. And the fact that they were using or hiring or having a retainer with 2 people working in a friend's bedroom is very unusual for the scale of kind of And then I realised that the initial work we were doing for them, and I think our day rate was like $270 a day, and it was low risk work. So if we fucked it up, they could just go to another and it was interesting thinking about it, because you wouldn't go to a 2-person in the bedroom with the strategy of the future of your business, because I think that was interesting, and really young sort of people starting agencies, I'm kind of you'll only get direct contact without going through a kind of I guess with the marketing or tech company, if it depends on the risk level of the work you're doing for them. And I guess we were working for their, like in their actual design team, and a lot of it was icon work and themes, and you know, like in all honesty, 20 other design companies in London can do it. So, but we were the cheapest, and we worked to sort of like a.
And we partied with them.
Interesting.
And we got drunk with them a lot.
Love it. Thank you so much for that.